Hey guys, welcome to another YouTube video. My name is Joe, and in this video we're going to be making a render inspired by Ducky 3D. If you don't know Ducky 3D, Ducky 3D is a legendary Blender YouTuber, and he has taught a lot of Blender users how to make amazing renders. So I came across this tutorial and I thought to give it a try. These renders look awesome, like they are really well done. The ground texture looks good. The environment feels very exclusive, and it just has a nice use of negative and empty space. The fog looks amazing, and the way it interacts with the light just looks really good. So what I'm just going to first do, I'm going to just get into it and scale this on the y-axis, and then I'll just scale this on every other axis apart from the y-axis. So we'll just have like a panel, and this is just going to be one part of the LED screen, right? So with this part, I'm just going to apply the scale first. I'm going to select the face, insert the face, and then extrude it. So this part of the panel, we're just going to build one part, and with this part we're going to use that to replicate for every other part. So I'm just going to insert this and then extrude inward. So we have one part of the panel. What I want to do next is just to add just a layer of bevel, just one. And then maybe I want to scale this on the y-axis. It looks too fat. So I'm going to add an array system, and in this array system I'm just going to increase our offset a bit, just a tad, just so that it has a hint that there's a space between these panels, right? I'm just going to increase our counts to 5, and then the next we're going to do, I'm going to add another array system, but this time we want to make sure that this is duplicated on the z-axis. So I'm going to copy that of the x and paste in the z, and the one of the y that is 0, I'm going to paste it in the x. I want to introduce a little bit of scaffolding, so I will introduce a cube, scale this, and scale this on the z-axis. I'm just going to bring this into the y, and then add an edge loop here. With all of this selected, I'm just going to press spacebar and click on poke faces, so we can apply a wireframe modifier to this, and we have what we might say is a scaffolding. So we can just increase the thickness of the scaffolding. Now we have that, we can just apply the wireframe, and the wireframe we can just join it with the screen, so it applies to every of these LED panels. Apply our bevel, then apply our 2-array system, and now we have everything committed into a mesh. We can texture and do whatever it is we want to do. So what we'll do next, we'll just right click, set origin to geometry, and we can shift S and bring that selection down to the cursor, and then we can move our camera away from the scene. Now we want a really wide shot, something that that is similar to what Ducky 3D did here. If you go through this, you will see that there's a lot of empty and inactive space. By the way, I forgot to mention that I already have a human figure here, and I already have a drum set that we're going to be using for this render. So I'm just going to go into the camera view and bring our camera down a bit, and then we can scale the ground plane. Something I want to introduce is a stage. If you look at our reference here, we have a stage here, and we also look at Ducky 3D's render, we also have a little stage right there. So I want to bring in like a cube, scale it on the z-axis, then I scale on every axis apart from the z-axis. So we have this going on. I can apply the scale, and something I want to introduce is maybe like a step, right, to get to the stage. So I'm going to go into my edit mode, select the face, insert these faces, extrude on the z-axis. I want to get close enough so I know that the weight of these things are not too far apart from each other. So we have a little staircase going on. I'm just going to reduce it because I feel like it looks really thick. And then I'm going to move back to my LED screen. Something I want to introduce to this LED screen is like a rope that is rigged between the LED screen and the ceiling. So I'm going to bring in my cursor to selected, and I'll introduce like a cylindrical element, scale on the z-axis, right? So for this, I'm just going to insert and just scale crazily on the z-axis. So I'm going to put one here, and I have add-ups installed already, so that's why I'll be able to select our rope, GX, select our rope, select the LED screen. Then when I click Alt X, I can always just quickly copy to the other, mirror to the other side. And that's because I have our hard ops activated. Okay, I think we're good. We're just going to apply the mirror modifier. No, let's not join it yet. Let's just go into texturing, then we can join it with the rope a little later. So I'm just going to create a new texture object, and this is the part that is fascinating about Ducky 3D's tutorial, is the node setup. He had 2 emission nodes, and one of the emission nodes was controlling the light on the screen, while the other part was controlling the amount of light that was pouring on the environment. So that texture setup was really mind-blowing. That's why I said I wanted to create something similar, right? So I'm just going to combine these 2 nodes with a mix node and connect it to our output. So our video texture is going to be connected to both. So we're just going to connect these 2, and we're going to go into rendered view so we can see what we're doing. Before I actually go into all of this texturing, I'm going to select all of this, create a new texture. This is going to just be black matte. We're going to assign everything to this texture, right? We don't want everything should be the screen. We want some parts to be like a black padding or something. So we're going to select all of these faces, and with you, we're going to project from view. So we have this going on, and with all this selection, we're going to assign everything to this screen material. So we'll click assign. Now we see that our texture has been assigned to this screen. So what we're going to do next, we're going to scale on the x-axis and just make sure that the aspect ratio doesn't look weird, right? So we have this texture going on. Something I want to do in order to make this look digital, like say something like this, I want to mix in some digital lines. So I'll bring in a wave texture and mix it with the video texture. So we have this mix going on. What I want to do, I want to change this axis to the z-axis so that we have the lines going across and not from top to bottom. So I'm going to increase the factor a bit and then change our mix to multiply, right? I'm going to bring in a color ramp, increase the scale of our counts with the color ramp. So with our node set to mix, you will now see that the lines is affecting our board in a kind of way that it makes this look like a real LED board, like that have lines. This one's is like a digital dots, but ours is lines. If you want to achieve the digital dots, you can use a Voronoi texture. You can just bring in a Voronoi texture, and I'll just primarily switch to this one. So if you see a Voronoi texture, you think there's a lot of randomness. What you can do to bring orderliness to it is just to reduce the randomness, and you discover that you can easily create this mask, these digital dots, with the Voronoi texture. We're not going to go into that as we are already short for time. Something I want to also do next, in order to make sure that these two separately affect the screen and the environment that we're creating here, we're going to use a light path node. It's camera rate to the factor, and now you will see that we can increase the amount of light that is touching the environment without necessarily affecting the screen. We can turn off the screen, and you see that we still have some light that is falling into the environment, right? And we can equally turn off the environment, and you discover that we have the screen bright and loud. Something I want to do with these digital lines is to go to the black and maybe grade out a bit, right? So we have that, and we're going to turn up the other light that's going to control that of the environment. So we can switch this to the rendered view, and we see that our scene is coming together. It's not there yet, it's not remotely there yet, but we can now begin to set up our camera. Something I want to do, I want to make this look like it's a curved screen. So I'm going to Alt D, copy to this side, rotate. That's the first part. So we're trying to make it look more immersive, right? So we have this setup. We're just going to select all of these 6 items and GZ. We're just going to lift it from the ground a bit. Why are we doing this? Because we also want to Alt D on the y-axis and just create an extra layer of the screen, just like this. So now we have the basic screen setup. I want to rotate this a little bit on the x-axis so I can RX also again. And now we're cool with this. This looks good. Something I would want to do, I want to start introducing our instruments and our human figure on this side. So I'm going to click on the place I want the drum. I want the drum here, so I'm going to shift and right click on this point, and it will introduce our 3D cursor to this point. So I'm going to click on the drums and shift S. With shift X I can bring that selection to this cursor. So I will just scale this and bring this up on the Z-axis. Now we have the drums on the scene. I can see that the camera is a little closer than I would want, a little too close for comfort. So I would switch the camera and just pull back on the camera a bit. I'm going to increase our stage on the x-axis just so it fills out the entire scene a bit more. Then we can introduce our human elements. So I can just bring him into view the way I want him to be in, and then we can move on to texturing the ground. So for the ground, I'm thinking we can actually get this texturing right here. This I won't say particularly blurry, but it has a little bit of roughness in it. So I will bring the roughness down so we can actually see what it's going to look like with zero roughness, and just bring up the roughness a bit, just so that it doesn't look blurred and doesn't have any kind of personality. I'm going to introduce in a noise texture, and I'll connect the noise texture to our color ramp and the color ramp into the roughness. So I'm just going to increase our noise scale just so we have enough, and maybe our detail down, roughness. Let's do roughness. Let's roughness up, and then we can use our color ramp to create a little bit more contrast. And let's see what that looks like. This looks wet. It looks like some parts are wet and some parts are dry. So I'm just going to take dark values and bring in a little bit of roughness to it. And let's see what that looks like. That looks dry and grungy. It looks like this. Okay, that's good. So we're going to be doing a little bit of spotlighting for our dude right here so that it stands out. So I'm just going to shift S and bring cursor to selected, and then I will add in a spotlight. So the spotlight is just going to come from the top. I'm going to select the camera, select our human object, and click track to constraints so that our light is always facing our guy irrespective of the direction that we place it. Okay, so our dude is standing out from the background a little more, but we can actually see the spotlight on the ground. Something we can also do to control this is to go to our object property and just switch it off on the glossy so it doesn't show on the ground, or maybe on the diffuse. Then we can change our dude to a glossy material so that we can at least see the lighting. Alright, I think we're okay with the lighting of the dude. I would just like to change the color of the light to the dominant light in the environment, and that's purple. And I think we're cool with that. Something else I would like to introduce to the render is this cube platform here in this inspiration. So I'm just going to add like a cube, so I can just scale on the Z-axis and just position in the corner right here. Maybe GY again, and just make sure that we're just having a hint of that platform there. What I'm going to do, I'm going to link the material of that new platform to our ground, and then we should have a little bit more activity over there. I think few things I want to do before setting up my fog is to reduce the y-axis of our camera just to make it much more cinematic, and then we can increase this our light a bit just so our dude can stand out, or we can create another light source for the dude. That is what we're going to do. So that looks good. I'm going to start bringing in my fog. So introduce a fog to your scene. We're just going to add a cube, scale it up, and then we'll create a new material, clear out the principal BSDF, and add in the volume node. So the principal volume We're just going to add that, and next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to connect it to our output node, and you see that the scene goes totally black because the density is too much. It looks a little bit too dark, so we're going to bring that 0.005. This our box is already obstructing objects in the environment, so I'm just going to go to our viewport and change that to bounds, and we see that our scene already looks half there. So what we can do now is to maybe run a first test render, see what it looks like, and then we can correct things accordingly. Looking at these screens now, I feel like we need to blow up the light source from the LED screens themselves, so we're going to increase that to say 20, and I think we're good with that. Alright guys, so we have our first render back, and something I think I want to maybe quickly correct is the ground texture. It looks a mess, and then I would probably work on the screen also, just so that we have a lot more light coming from the screen. Also, our ropes are lost, so I'm going to introduce like a backlight to the LED screen so that it stands out a little more. So I'm just going to quickly work on that. So I feel like our wave texture is a little too harsh, so we can just highlight the screen, come to the dark part, and then move it towards white. Now we know that we don't have so much of obstruction from the LED screen, and then just so we are sure, I can increase the screen to say 35 should be enough, and then this to 90, just for good measure. I'm just going to hit render and see what we get. Alright guys, we have our render back, and something I'm looking at the size of the drum in relation to the guy. I think I'm going to reduce the size of the drum, 1. 2, I'm probably going to increase the size of the LED and probably reduce the size of the rope, just to give the scene a little bit of more scale definition. Alright, so we have our final render. Something I just want to quickly adjust before we move to post-processing is to maybe kill the distortion. Maybe our fog glow should be reduced, so I'll take that size down to 6 and maybe bring up the threshold. No, I think the size to 6 is good enough. So we have our final, this is our render result. We need to go to our viewer node, and now we have our final render. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to click on save, and then I will create a new option so it doesn't override our former render. I'll click on RGB, click on 16 and kill the compression and save the image. Something I want to do next is to go into Photoshop and just work on the image basically. So I'm just going to load the image into Photoshop, convert to smart object, and then when I go into filter, I can use our camera raw filter to make the image more vibrant. So I will just go into light and then increase our exposure a bit, just a bit. I'm not going to touch the contrast yet, but then what I'm going to do to the highlight, I'm just going to reduce the highlight a bit. I'm going to bump up the shadows, I'm going to increase the whites, and then I'm going to drop the blacks a bit. So next I'm going to go into color and the tint. I'm just going to go and take that towards magenta. Then I'm going to increase the vibrance of the entire scene, and then maybe give it a little bit more saturation. So we're going to go into effect, and we're going to up our texture, increase clarity, and then we are going to bring down the edge just to show a little bit more of the impact of the fog, and then we're going to add a little bit of vignettes just around, just so that it contains the entire scene. Looking at the scene now, it looks a little bit overexposed, so I'm going to bring down the exposure a bit more. So something I'm going to do next, I'm going to introduce a little bit of more texture by increasing the grains. I would want to reduce the grain. The grain is a little too much and unrealistic. So this is the final image out of camera raw. We're just going to look at the before and the after. So this is the before and after. If you look at the corners of the render, this place, they are unrealistically black. Something I want to do, I want to bring in a curve node and then maybe go to blue and then do the same. Okay, so we're now seeing that the corners of the renders now looks bluish. It's no longer dark anymore. So that's about it, guys, and this is the final render we're going to be working with. So that's it, guys. So long, and until I see you in the next one. Peace.